I was changing, and I'm like looking to my parents. I'm like, you have no idea what I'm exposed to. You have no idea what I need right now. You have no idea what I'm going through. The one who's going to be able to reach the teens has got to be attuned to what is happening at that time.
Welcome back for another episode of True Northing with Kristen and Allison. We are so happy to have you listening in today. What we are thinking about, have been thinking about, I guess, for a long time is our teen girls and what they go through, what they need. We reflect often on our own experience during that time of life, and that's actually when we met, when Allie and I met. And that was such a pivotal time in life, as it is for most girls and boys. And so we thought we would go into a little bit of a story time and share about our experience during that time. And what part of what is inspiring this conversation is something, Allie, you brought in from Mary Pfeiffer in reading her book. If you want to share a little bit about that.
I'm having such a big picture experience right now of like holding our teen girl selves in my heart and fast forward to now in our mid 30s and, well, for me, almost late 30s, and having this conversation that our 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old selves had no idea we would be having. How beautiful. We met when we were, 11 or 12, in 6th grade, I should say, middle school. And as you mentioned, Mary Pfeiffer, she's the author of a number of books, but the one that I'm referring to specifically right now is called Reviving Ophelia: Saving the Selves of Adolescent Girls. And she originally wrote this book, I think, in the 80s, but rewrote the book in what was it, maybe 10 years ago, with her daughter. And the new edition features all the current struggles that girls are facing. So it's the latest edition, and clearly one of the biggest struggles girls are facing is media and the introduction of social media. So we'll go into more of that later. But in this book, Reviving Ophelia, Mary Pfeiffer says that our adolescent years are so important and consequential in our lives, that they can shape us and our experience for the rest of our lives. They are so impressionable. And I think we found that to be true. And not necessarily that our teen years, or the choices that we made then are still impacting us today. But what happened during that time was so impressionable on us that we still reflect. It's still meaningful. It still had lasting imprints on us. And I think that those who were our peers during that time, who were around us during that time, we can see I'm not in touch with many of them, but I think that we can see the lasting impact that choices during that time made on the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. So true. It's it's kind of mind-boggling how much those experiences during that time have stuck with me
Hmm.
and really, really did change so much. So anyway, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. So, story time, 6th grade is when we met. on the sometime in recess, one of the recesses that we had. Um, I know for me, I think that what I remember about you, what I remember first meeting about you is that I had kind of already gotten involved with this um, maybe more in clique of girls during that time. And I remember how big that experience was for me because what I remember about these group of girls is that they would walk around linked arms at recess. And it was this air of like, like you'd almost hold your breath when they walked by because it was so intimidating. This level of what seemed like confidence or security or popularity or impact that they could have within their group. And what I remembered was that one day they said, "Do you want to walk around with us at recess?" And there was no other question. There was no other answer I could give. Like it was either like life or death is what it felt like. You're either going to live and you're going to join this group or you're going to die and they're going to taunt you forever. And so I'm like, yes, I will walk with you at recess, and not because I was excited and wanted to, but because I was in terror. So, anyways, I had said, yes, I will walk around at recess. And that was it. Then it was every recess I was in this group. And one day, I think some of the girls had already met you, maybe in a class, been talking to you, and we were meeting. And there was Kristen, who had just moved from the East Coast. And I'm curious, your perspective.
Yeah, I had just moved with my family from Virginia, where I felt so connected to
Mm,
community. I had so many hobbies and activities and neighborhood friends, and it felt so secure and safe in that little bubble. And was more of a tomboy and an athlete. That was, what I was interested in and what all my friends were interested in. And then I was plopped out of that environment and into this very
mm,
drastically different environment where my whole foundation of security was shattered. Really, I felt so insecure. I was in a new place. There were family dynamics that were there, and the way that I was and what I was used to was not really acceptable or liked in this new environment. It was very different. It wasn't cool to be a tomboy. It wasn't really cool to be athletic with with the cool group, with the in crowd. And I didn't know anyone, and so it was a really vulnerable place to be. And yeah, for whatever reason, I can remember simply standing in the schoolyard and this group of girls walking around, and they were coming up upon me, and kind of the queen bee, uh, popular girl, just grabbed, it wasn't even a question, she just grabbed my arm, she linked arms with me and tugged me along.
mm,
And I had no idea what was happening, and similar to you, it was a feeling of terror, and there was no like, this is it, like you just go along,
mm,
and also excitement of,
mm,
wow, I've been chosen, wow, they want me to walk with them, right? I'm feeling like I am somebody. So yeah, and then that was the start of it.
Hmm. I think that moment is so important to look at. That moment where you said, I was a tomboy, I had all my activities, and then I was put in this new environment. And similarly for me, I had just come from an elementary school. And I went to the middle school different than all my friends from elementary school had gone to. And so I was going also into a new environment. And I remember feeling so innocent, just so innocent. Like I was really excited though, because sixth grade meant that I could wear makeup to school. And what that meant for me was just like this glimmery eyeshadow, this like really like kind of angelic, glimmery, like pinkish eyeshadow on my lids. And I think we both kind of had this experience of like almost, I know I felt this like almost shock coming into this different environment where these girls, I don't know what their experience was, if elementary school was already like this for them, but it seemed to me like they knew what they were doing and that they had already had this whole thing figured out, and that I was this baby that suddenly needed to grow up. And there was nothing, I mean, now that I'm a mom, I can say that there were things that could have prepared me for that moment. But at that time, it just felt like two worlds like colliding, and that nothing could have really prepared me for that moment. Where that alley that was before that moment would never be the same.
Yeah. It's such a vulnerable place to be. I mean, in general, it's a vulnerable time
Mm-hmm.
developmentally where the most important task that we're faced with is to discover who we are and where we fit in with the group, with society.
Mm-hmm.
Who do I belong to? And feeling accepted by others is so crucial. And so you already have that need to belong. But then what we're describing is how you and I also had these other vulnerabilities of
Mm-hmm.
being plopped into a new, totally new environment where we felt kind of isolated or alone or othered. And it just was an added layer that made us more susceptible to this situation of just shape shifting and doing anything we could to feel that acceptance and just going along with the crowd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to name that this episode is really going to be part one. This is where we're going to share more of our personal experience. Um, and then in part two, we'll get to really go into more detail regarding um, what adolescent, specifically girls, need and how to show up for them. Um, because there are ways that we could have been nurtured at that time. There are ways that we could have been supported at that time. And so I guess in this episode specifically, we'll go into personal experience, what we felt like we needed, and kind of blend in um, psychology there as well. But what I remember happening at that time was this race to then suddenly understand who I needed to be. And, like what was cool, how, if I'm going to get walked at recess and walk with these girls, like what are they doing? Who are they? Who do I need to be in order to be, not really to be like them necessarily, even though that was a part of it. It was, for me personally, it was more like, how do I avoid being um, bullied or ridiculed? What do I got to do to avoid that?
Right. And I I learned very quickly, and I imagine you did too, what those things were, right? Getting that feedback from the group. Why are you wearing that? Or
Mhm.
what's wrong with you? Or ew, don't talk like that, or whatever it is. Just constant feedback about who we are and what we're doing, the way that we're showing up. And that was an immediate message to reject whatever that was. Okay, don't do that again. Don't dress like that. Don't talk
Mm,
like that. Make sure you're using the right language and doing the things and going along with it in order to maintain that group acceptance.
Mhm. Yeah, so many messages along the way of, as you said, don't do that, don't talk like that, don't wear that. And also, oh, you like her? So this exclusivity within the group as well, like who you could talk to, who you could like, who you could want to spend time with as well. And so there was this almost like cult-minded mentality within this group. And it was a girl group, but it was a girl group that was connected to boy groups and different cool boy groups at the time. There was like some relationship there between the the top figures.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, from there, for the rest of middle school, for me, it was a slew of experiences, just an ongoing experience, I guess, where I felt really unsafe, really uncomfortable, um, but accepted, which brought its own pseudo safety.
mhm,
Like I'm okay as long as I fit in, as long as they're letting me sit with them, as long as they're inviting me to the party, as long as we're good,
mhm,
I'm okay. But really, it led to me being in a lot of situations that I didn't want to be in
mm,
and making decisions based on what they were doing and what I thought they wanted me to do that I wasn't qualified to make
mm,
developmentally. It was too much. The situations were too much. And it felt like I had no choice. I just had to go along with the situations. I had to do whatever I needed to do to fit in, regardless of my own comfort. And it was very fear based.
mhm,
It wasn't, these were situations and choices that I was not proud of. I was not comfortable with. I didn't enjoy, but I felt like I didn't have a choice. Or I felt like if I chose differently, if I honored what I really wanted, the consequence would be too great.
The consequence was too great.
Yeah.
You would not just be expelled from the group, but you would be ridiculed and shamed, and you would never get to live it down. Like if you did anything outside of what was considered okay, or if you made your own choice instead, your autonomy and your strength was a threat.
Oh yeah.
And it was such a threat that it was really scary to imagine what that would look like. And especially within the kind of group of people that we were hanging out with. I mean, there was real life things that were scary, like physical violence and threats and all that kind of stuff. And so doing anything outside of that did have consequences. And so when I think it's really interesting because in this conversation, I'm realizing more than ever how much was fear based. It was fear based and shame based. And like, oh, you haven't smoked a cigarette yet? Like, in the pressure was so strong that it was I mean, for any adult, I mean, in that kind of situation, in that kind of group, I mean, that's a lot to come up against. That's a lot to come up against. And so um it really speaks to the vulnerability, as you mentioned, being in that fear state, but like that fear state mixed with that like pressure and shame is was pretty relentless and difficult. It felt impossible to navigate at times. It felt
It did.
impossible to have a sense of self.
It did. It
Yeah.
did feel impossible. And you're so right. If it was like once you're a part of the group, once we were a part of the group,
Mm-hmm.
there was no leaving because, as you said, if you did something to upset the group and they rejected me,
Mm-hmm.
then they were gonna make my life hell, right? It wasn't just, "Okay, you don't hang out with us anymore, cool, I'll go find another group." It was no, it was there would be ridicule, there would be rumors,
Mm-hmm.
there would be threats. It was like the message was very much, "Do not cross us." And, when I say us, there was, like, one kind of queen bee and then, um, those closest to her, so there was 2 or 3
Mm-hmm.
that really were kind of the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you develop a sense of self when you're in that kind of environment? I do, thinking about it now, believe those situations were absolutely too big
Mm-hmm.
for a 12 or
Totally.
13-year-old to navigate
Mm-hmm.
appropriately. It was too much,
Mm-hmm.
and I can remember constantly longing for an adult, any adult, to step in and pluck me out of those situations. I couldn't do it. I did not have the power to say no, and so I was really looking for the adults around to do that for me,
Mm-hmm.
saying no for me. "No, I'm not gonna let you do this. You know what? I'm noticing that you're becoming really reclusive and I don't like how you're dressing and you don't seem like yourself. You don't seem happy. What's going on with this group you're hanging out with?" Right? Just somebody to step in and make that call that I could not make.
Mm. And what did that feel like at the time? Did it feel like a wanting, or did it show up as something else?
It f- it was it was a wanting. It felt like it, deep inside I was crying out for
Mm-hmm.
help,
Mm-hmm.
but it was covered up by anger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was so angry. That's what my mom experienced. The adults around me, my family members, that's what they saw and received was anger.
Right.
That I was so angry, and I was angry because what I was needing was not being met, and I felt so alone to navigate a situation that I shouldn't have had to navigate. That's what it felt like for me.
Many situations. Many
Mhm.
situations. I remember getting dropped off at the movies and sneaking out the back straight
Mm-hmm.
away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like anything was possible
Yeah,
at that time. Anything was possible on the other side of that movie theater.
right.
But I also experienced anger, and that's why I was curious. Did you experience it as a wanting? Because I felt so far away from my parents and my family. I felt I was worlds away, that they had no idea what I was going through. And they didn't. They really didn't. And that's scary to me, how big that split was between generations, or the education about what teens are going through, because there was real life stuff that was happening that my parents were so in the dark about. And I think that it's almost like my parents were replaced by these figures in the group,
Yeah.
that they were now in charge of me. They were now my leaders. And with my own daughter, who's now 14, I I really did feel the shift when she was about 12, and I felt like it was no longer this parenting role that I was used to, of like, I'm your parent and like, I'm here with you, but I'm kind of like teaching and telling, and it just felt like this total shift in our relationship, which feels really developmental, that the guidance was becoming something else, and our way of relating was becoming something else, a new way of parenting. And so I'm seeing at that time the vulnerability of that like 12-year-old self, that the leadership that I was needing at that time was different than my parents, but what was available to me, what was available and what I was vulnerable to, was somebody willing to take charge and tell me who I needed to be and how to act and what to think at that age. And so just kind of relaying that there is something that happened, there is a shift in identity, but also who you're looking towards at that age for guidance.
It's fascinating to hear you talk about it that way in terms of leadership. It's so true. At that age, we are not developed enough. We don't have enough of a self
Mhm.
identity to be the leader, to make those good choices. And so we are so susceptible to that leadership. And if there isn't a strong parental leadership, uh, helping us
Mhm.
in those situations, guiding us, being the leader, then yeah, somebody else is going to step in and be that leader. Because
Mhm.
we need it.
Yeah, and what it makes me think of is like attuned to that specific age. Like a leader who's attuned to what this specific age is going through, because I was changing and I'm like looking to my parents. I'm like, you have no idea what I'm exposed to. You have no idea what I need right now. You have no idea what I'm going through, what I'm thinking about. Like, you've got no idea. And so the leader, the one who's going to be able to reach the teens, has got to be attuned to what is happening at that time.
Right. It's not just authoritarian coming in like, this is what you need to do. I'm making the decision. Right. It has to be loving. It has to be empathetic. There has to be attunement,
Mhm.
understanding of the needs that the preteen or teen is having at that time, and the vulnerability and how scary it is, the
Mhm.
situations, the need to belong. It's like a really loving, attuned, secure leadership and guidance is needed there.
Yeah, and I think of like gangs, honestly, and gangs really prey upon that vulnerability, identity, belonging, like all of these real needs for humans, but especially coming of age.
Yeah, I often think about that movie 13,
Mm, mhm.
which, yeah, I don't know, is like
It's
10,
not fresh
15,
in my
20 years
mind,
old.
but I remember felt really impactful when I saw it.
Yeah, if anybody has seen that, to me, that movie beautifully, scarily,
Yeah.
really depicted what we went through,
Mhm.
what a lot of 13-year-olds have been going through.
Mhm.
Something that's interesting when I think about that time in my life now, I recognize I did not have access to my no, to say
Mm,
no. That was not developed for me. In really any situation socially
mm,
where feeling accepted and liked by my peers was paramount. That was the number one most important thing to me. I could not say no. I
mm-mm,
could certainly feel internally my no. I
mm,
knew if I didn't want to do something, but I could not access it. It felt like I literally could not say no. If somebody suggested something,
mm,
hey, do you want some of this? Hey, do you want to go over there? Whatever it was. Hey, do you want to go do this thing? Do you want to shoplift? Do you want to whatever the choice was?
mhm,
I was frozen. I guess it's fawning, right? I would freeze and I would fawn. I would okay, like I would just go along with whatever it was because they suggested it, and there was no was not a possibility for me, not part of my vocabulary. So I think about that too.
mm,
Just the growing up, the family culture, and yeah, I think about where that
mm,
opportunity was missed
mm,
to teach me about saying no and recognizing my own wants and truth and honoring myself,
mm,
even when it meant risking rejection, which was the scariest thing.
Right. Right. If we can't have that experience when we're young of feeling empowered in our no, and that the people who are caretakers and are supposed to love us will still be there on the other side of us saying no,
Right.
the risk becomes too big. And I think about also rite of passage, like, because we were young girls, but we were also coming of age. And something that felt really important at that time was this, like, maturing and this coming into puberty and, like, being a little bit older. Like, that felt important. And so our guides at that time were like, "Okay, this is your menu. This is how you're gonna do it. You're gonna shoplift. There's, drugs, there's boys, there's, any of these things. These are the things that make you older. Drinking, right?
mhm,
Versus a true coming of age and developmentally, and like what is the menu for our adolescents in that rite of passage? What do they have to feel older besides sex, drugs, alcohol, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of independence do they have? And when I think about these leaders, because I think this is a really important piece, when I think about these leaders of the group, I think about children who had to be in those roles and whose innocence was spoiled before it should have been. In whatever way, I don't know. And Mary Pfeiffer does talk about this, is that the girls who have had their childhood taken often feel so much pain when they see girls who haven't had that, that the only choice that they have is to spoil it for others.
Oh, wow.
So nowadays we see that in media, so much, and, different pressures similar to what we faced of like, what are you dressing like? What are you doing? Like they pressure others because that's what they had to go through.
Hmm.
And they got their childhood taken, they got their innocence taken from them one way or another. And as you know, I did have somebody step in and say no for me, like when you said you wish that somebody would just come in and save you, is that eventually I did have that somebody. My dad came in and basically grounded me for like a month or something and wouldn't let me go to the parties anymore. It was like, yeah, no, no, I've had a little window into what's happening. You're not going and you're not going to do that. And it was so painful and it sucked. And it was more helpful to have an adult, but then there came a time that I started saying no, and it was lonely. It was very, very dark, lonely time. And I was threatened. I was scared. And I was scared for a long time, to be honest. And so what what teen girls are going through is real. It is real life stuff, and we can look and be like, "Oh, they're kids." No, they are really facing adult situations, yet they are not prepared to handle them. And as the adults, we need to know that this is really happening, and there are choices that we can make and ways that we need to support and step in.
And next episode, we'll
Yeah.
dive in more into the book, Reviving Ophelia, and um, the wisdom of Mary Piper, and all of those other pieces we haven't touched on that adolescent and teen girls are experiencing, that are new pieces that maybe we weren't experiencing when we were that age, that need to be considered, and really breaking down what kids, really specifically girls, need during this time of development, and ways that parents can step in and support.
Yeah, the founder of Waldorf education, Rudolf Steiner, says that it's the grand metamorphosis. And so it just really these teen years are this grand metamorphosis that can happen. And so when I think about supporting, as we're going to do next episode, it's just like, what are we supporting? We're supporting this huge change that teens are going through, and this beautiful and scary um, metamorphosis, reconfiguration of who they are, becoming who they are. More next week.
More next week. And if you haven't subscribed already, we would love it if you'd hit that button. It helps us reach more people, and it'll also help you to get notified when the next episode comes out. Thank you so much.